Chief Executive John Lee announces plans for border reopening this Sunday. Multiple channels will be available, but not the high-speed rail. The U.S. Congress fails to elect its speaker again. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Chief Executive John Lee announced this afternoon Hong Kong will resume quarantine-free cross-border travel with the mainland starting this Sunday. A total of 7 border checkpoints will resume operations, and the daily quota for travellers is set at 60,000 each way. Christy Khan reports.
The long-awaited reopening of the border between Hong Kong and the mainland is set to resume this Sunday, January 8th. In a press briefing this afternoon, Chief Executive John Lee announced that the proposal concerning the reopening of the border has been approved by the central authorities. A daily quota of up to 60,000 people will be allowed to travel across the borders each way every day in the first stage. But Hong Kong residents returning to the city and mainland residents heading home will be exempted from the quota system. In addition to the current border checkpoints in Shenzhen Bay, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and the Hong Kong International Airport, 4 more checkpoints will resume operations. These include the Lok Ma Chau Spur Line, Man Kam 2, and the 2 cross-border ferry terminals. 50,000 travelers can commute between the mainland and Hong Kong via the free land crossing checkpoints in Lok Ma Chau, Man Kam 2, and Shenzhen Bay, and the rest will be allowed to travel by ferry or air. As for the timeline for the city to enter the second phase, reopening more border checkpoints and increasing the daily quota for travelers, the chief executive said the reopening process will be conducted in a gradual and orderly manner.
When will I take the next step? Of course, I will have to seek the endorsement of my counterparts, because crossing, as it means crossing the boundaries of the 2 places. So agreement has to be sought. So after this 60,000 number, which is really for consideration of crowd management, I wish to proceed to the next stage, but that will have to be done as we monitor the situation upon the normal resumption takes place on the 8th.
Also, Hong Kong residents are required to submit an online registration to reserve their preferred time slots and border checkpoints. And they have to show a negative PCR test result within 48 hours before departure. The authorities added that they will consider allowing cross-border students to travel between 2 places without the need for submitting online registration after the Lunar New Year holiday. Christy Khan, TVB News.
7 border control points will resume pre-COVID working hours, but the initial resumption of cross-border travel will not include the high-speed rail link. Authorities explain more time is needed for workers to familiarize themselves with the operation and stress the high-speed trains will resume service no later than the 15th of this month.
Finally, after more than 2 years, cross-border buses are back on the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Western Corridor. This comes as the representatives from the shuttle bus sector were invited to the Shenzhen Bay port for a drill to try out the procedures to cross the border. Private vehicles must also undergo inspection for their quotas and would be given a green light after they receive a QR code. Starting Sunday, the Shenzhen Bay port will open from 6:30 a.m. to midnight. The Lok Ma Chau Spur Line immigration control point with the highest number of quotas will open from 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. The Man Kam 2 border control point will open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. The China Ferry Terminal will open from 6 a.m. to midnight and resume the route between Tsim Sha Tsui and Shenzhen Fuyong Ferry Terminal. The Hong Kong-Macau Ferry Terminal will resume trips to Shekou and operate 24 hours a day, same as the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Residents can take public transport to all control points. Still, the Hong Kong section of the high-speed rail, which has not been operating for almost 3 years, will not resume service yet. Authorities explain time is needed for more drills and test runs.
For captains from Hong Kong side, there are already 40 of them. And for the mainland section, they are operating in a normal manner. We need to take vacant time slots to carry out the drills, so the XRL will resume service no later than the 15th of January.
Authorities say operators will also deploy more manpower to assist passengers and strengthen services at individual control points if need be.
An online booking system allowing travellers to reserve slots to head to the mainland was launched at 6 p.m. this afternoon. Hong Kong and non-mainland residents can make an appointment to leave the city through 3 of the land ports and the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Mimo Singha reports.
Starting Sunday, people who wish to travel to the mainland via the Shenzhen Bay, Lok Ma Chau and Man Kam To checkpoints will have to reserve spots online before their trips. Travellers who decide to travel by private cars via the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge will also need to sign up online for spots. The online booking system was launched at 6 p.m. today. It allows residents to reserve places from January 8th to March 4th in the first phase. A new 7-day time slot will become available every Sunday. Applicants can enter the system via Gov Hong Kong, and they have to provide personal details such as names in English and Chinese, dates of birth, ID numbers, and phone numbers. Each applicant can reserve spots for no more than 3 companions. Successful applicants will receive a QR code which they need to present when crossing the border at their reserved time, together with a negative PCR test result. To prepare for the reopening, authorities prepared a drill at the Shenzhen Bay port ahead of the quarantine-free border travel starting the Sunday. During the drill, mainland residents were lining up in separate lines. Mimo Singha, TVB News.
Starting Sunday, travellers entering Macau from Hong Kong are no longer required to do PCR tests upon arrival. All they need is a negative test result valid within 48 hours prior to their travel. The same rule applies to those travelling from Hong Kong to the mainland. As for those travelling to the mainland from Macau, they're not required to get tested if they haven't been to overseas 7 days before their entry. Mainland authorities have also resumed all transits at Hong Kong and Macau airports and scrapped the cap on the number of people allowed on each flight. Visa applications for mainland residents to Hong Kong will also be resumed. Hong Kong reported 18,258 positive COVID cases today. Among the reported cases, 164 were imported. 34 cases were reported across 19 elderly homes and 9 disabled homes. 68 more people succumbed to the virus. And in other news now, in the U.S., House Republicans failed through a second day of multiple balloting Wednesday, but were still unable to elect the House Speaker as Kevin McCarthy again failed to secure a majority of votes. That's despite an intervention by former President Donald Trump.
No member-elect having received the majority of the votes cast, a Speaker has not been elected. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise?
I move that we adjourn until 8 o'clock this evening.
After 6 rounds of voting over 2 days, the Republicans failed to vote Kevin McCarthy into the top job as House Speaker. McCarthy saw his tally slip to 201 as 20 hardline Republican conservatives hold out, refusing to support him. Former U.S. President Donald Trump personally called the rebel Republican conservatives to lobby for McCarthy, but to no avail. The next House Speaker needs a minimum of 218 votes to be elected. Democrats nominated Hakeem Jeffries as their party leader and their choice of Speaker. He won 212 votes, the most overall. Amazon will lay off more than 18,000 workers as part of a workforce reduction in the latest high-profile redundancy plan announced by tech giants. The layoff starting January 18th will largely impact the company's e-commerce and human resources organizations, said Amazon's chief executive Andy Jassy. The cuts amount to 6% of Amazon's 300,000 corporate workforce. It represents a swift turn for a retailer that recently doubled its base pay ceiling to compete more aggressively for talent. Amazon has braced for slower growth as soaring inflation encouraged businesses and consumers to cut back spending, and its share price has halved in the past year. The company began letting staff go in November from its devices division. At the time, it was targeting around 10,000 job cuts. Amazon has more than 1.5 million workers, including warehouse staff, making it America's second largest private employer after Walmart. Beijing's National Development and Reform Commission has allowed 3 central government-backed utilities and its top steelmaker to resume coal imports from Australia, according to media reports. This is the first such move since China imposed an unofficial ban on coal trade with Canberra in 2020. The partial easing of the coal import ban comes after the Chinese and Australian foreign ministers met last month seeking to reset the frosty diplomatic relations between the two nations. The NDRC summoned China Datang Corp, China Huaneng Group, China Energy Investment Corporation and China Baowu Steel Group on Tuesday to discuss the resumption of coal imports from Australia. The firms will be granted permission to purchase Australian coal only for their own use. Australia used to be the second largest coal supplier to China before the unofficial ban. It accounted for nearly 30% of China's coal imports, or more than 70 million tons of supply. At the Vatican, bells tolled for the funeral of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI as thousands of mourners packed St. Peter's Square for a rare requiem mass of a dead pontiff presided over by a living one. The faithful applauded as pallbearers carried Benedict's cypress coffin out of the fog-shrouded St. Peter's Basilica and rested it before the altar. Heads of state and royalty, clergy from around the world and thousands of people flocked to the Vatican despite Benedict's requests for simplicity and official efforts to keep the first funeral for a Pope Emeritus in modern times low-key. Pope Emeritus Benedict, which was formerly called Joseph Ratzinger, died on December 31st at age 95. He is considered one of the 20th century's greatest theologians and spent his lifetime upholding church doctrine. He will also go down in history for being the first pope in 6 centuries to retire, having done so in 2013, citing his increasing frailty. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has listed 5 promises to tackle the country's most pressing problems, from cutting inflation to ending illegal migration. This as Sunak is poised to announce legislation to stop strikes by enforcing minimum service levels in 6 sectors, including health, rail and education, after a wave of industrial action in the country this winter. Tracy Furness has more.
In one of his first major political speeches since he took office, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said his government would build a better future for our children and grandchildren. Aiming to reassure his critics within his Conservative Party, he listed 5 promises he aims to achieve.
First, we will halve inflation this year to ease the cost of living and give people financial security. Second, we will grow the economy, creating better paid jobs and opportunity right across the country. Third, we will make sure our national debt is falling so that we can secure the future of public services. Fourth, NHS waiting lists will fall and people will get the care they need more quickly. Fifth, we will pass new laws to stop small boats, making sure that if you come to this country illegally, you are detained and swiftly removed.
It was as much a statement of intent as it was a reply to critics who doubt whether the 42-year-old has what it takes to pull the country out of the myriad of problems it is facing. Thousands of workers have gone on strike to protest over pay. The health service is in crisis. Inflation is hovering around 40-year highs, and economists predict Britain is slipping into a long recession. Meanwhile, Sunak is poised to announce legislation to enforce minimum service levels in 6 sectors, including health, rail, education, fire and border security, The Times reported Wednesday. The new laws will require a proportion of union members to continue working to retain a minimal level of service. The strikes would be deemed illegal if unions refused to provide a minimal level of service. Employers would be able to sue unions and sack staff under government plans to curb the right to strike. The Prime Minister announced his plans to introduce anti-strike laws in an interview with the Daily Mail last month. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus has reiterated that the agency is concerned about the surge in COVID infections in China. He urged Beijing to deliver rapid and regular data on hospitalization and virus-related deaths in the country.
We continue to ask China for more rapid, regular, reliable data on hospitalizations and deaths, as well as more comprehensive real-time viral sequencing. WHO is concerned about the risk to life in China and has reiterated the importance of vaccination, including booster doses to protect against hospitalization, severe disease, and death.
Tedros said he understood why numerous countries have recently taken measures against travelers coming from China, saying it's understandable that some countries are taking steps to prevent their citizens. The WHO said Chinese scientists have now shared more than 770 genetic sequences of the COVID virus, with Omicron subvariants BA.5 and its descendants accounting for more than 97% of all local infections. Russia President Vladimir Putin sent a frigate to the Atlantic Ocean armed with new generation hypersonic cruise missiles Wednesday. It's seen as a signal to the West that Russia will not back down in what Moscow calls its special military operation in Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry released footage of the frigate leaving a Russian naval base in the northern city of Severomorsk. Russia, China and the United States are in a race to develop hypersonic weapons, which are seen as a way to gain an edge over any adversary because of their speeds above 5 times the speed of sound. Meanwhile, Ukraine's economy decreased by 30% in 2022 because of the war with Russia. It is the largest GDP decline since the country's independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. CES 2023, formerly known as the Consumer Electronics Show, just opened in Las Vegas. One new device aims to let dogs and send messages to their owner's smartphone.
So you want to start with something that's really meaningful already intrinsically to your dog. So if you have to say W-A-L-K, because you know if you say the walk word, they're going to go and get quite excited, that's probably a word that they recognize and maybe a word you might want to use on your button board. So starting with words that they already know and then associating them with things that happen in your life normally. So when you go on a W-A-L-K, you press the button for walk and you head out the door.
The company that produces the product sells various button kits and believes the technology could lead to happier dogs and owners alike. The idea is that once the canines have figured out how to use the buttons, they are likely to be able to more accurately communicate their needs, whether it be eating or going for a walk. Back locally, starting today, 3 note-issuing banks in the city will provide new banknotes exchange and good as new notes. They are notes in good conditions and suitable for use for red packets in the Lunar New Year. This morning, many residents went to a Bank of China branch on Shanghai Street in Mongkok early, and as a result, the exchange service ended at just 9:30 a.m. Over at an HSBC bank on Nathan Road, each resident can only exchange one set of new banknotes worth $3,000, including $20 and $50 bills. The public has until the 21st of this month to exchange new notes at HSBC, Standard Chartered and Bank of China. That's the news. Thanks for watching.